Welcome back, everyone, to part 5 of this Explainer series. Let's jump right in. Today, we're taking everything we've uncovered about the Manistee Fire Department and the MFRA Regionalization Initiative and tying it all together. We're talking systemic risks, administrative, financial, legal. We're keeping things strictly objective, focusing purely on statutory compliance. It's a heavy one, so buckle up.
Here's the roadmap for today. We've got 4 main areas to cover. First, governance and OMA violations. Second, labor relations and whistleblowers. Third, financial and administrative liabilities. And finally, the 5 regionalization traps. Let's get to it.
Okay, before we get into the weeds, we really need to define our terms, specifically material liability. Now, we're not talking about office gossip or, interpersonal drama. We're talking about tangible exposure to significant financial, legal, or operational penalties because of a failure to follow the rules. It's structural risk. And here's the kicker: when a municipality ignores statutory compliance, who ends up footing the bill? The taxpayers.
Section 1. Governance and OMA violations, also known as the transparency gap.
It's actually pretty wild how casual administrative habits can suddenly trigger massive legal exposure for a city and its townships. Right now, there's a serious debate over whether the MFD Steering Committee is just some laid-back working group or a formal public body under Michigan law. Well, the Open Meetings Act gives us a clear checklist. 1. Did they use formal legislative acts, like resolutions of support? Yes. 2. Is there public funding involved, like a $5,000 baseline entry fee? Yup. 3. Were members officially appointed? Yes. And 4. Does the committee serve a governmental function by formulating policy? Yes again. Checking these 4 boxes legally transforms an informal group into a formal public body.
And if there's any lingering doubt, Michigan courts have already weighed in on this. Cases like Pinebrook Warren and Booth newspaper set a very clear precedent. Quote, narrowing of options is considered a final action. Think about it. If a committee researches and whittles down the choices before handing them to a city council just to be rubber-stamped, that committee is actively deliberating public policy. And by law, that absolutely requires open public meetings.
So, trying to dodge the Open Meetings Act through this kind of advisory loophole isn't just a minor procedural oopsie. It's a real liability. When a committee that's shaping a massive regionalization proposal operates in the dark, no public notice, no minutes, it's inviting serious legal trouble. We're talking about the very real possibility of a circuit court injunction that could stop the whole regionalization process dead in its tracks. Transparency isn't just a nice-to-have, it is the law.
Moving on to Section 2, labor relations and whistleblower risk. The cost of retaliation.
Okay, so let's shift from the outside governance stuff to the internal machinery. There's this super important concept in labor law called temporal proximity. Basically, the exact timing of when someone gets disciplined can be a huge red flag for retaliation. Take a look at this timeline. It's pretty glaring. On day 1, an employee does something protected by law, say contacting a legislative rep about a safety concern. Later that exact same day, management suddenly slaps them with a formal warning for a minor infraction that had been totally ignored for 7 weeks. Then on day 2, a second notice drops, explicitly calling out the employee's chat with the rep as unauthorized political activity.
That timeline right there, that connects directly to the Michigan Whistleblowers Protection Act, specifically MCL 15.362. This law is crystal clear. You absolutely cannot retaliate against a public employee who reports safety concerns or legal violations to a public body. When a disciplinary action magically appears the very second an employee speaks up, the municipality is staring down the barrel of severe legal and financial consequences.
And it doesn't stop there. The source documents highlight several indicators of unfair labor practices, or ULPs. We're seeing things like the repudiation of union contracts, failing to bargain on mandatory subjects, and documented anti-union animus. But honestly, the most glaring issue might be these broad social media gag orders. When you tell staff they can't even identify as department members online, you're creating an overbroad restriction. Whether it's accidental or totally intentional, it suppresses the reporting of real safety issues to the public and to regulators. That just piles on the liability.
And all of this toxic environment stuff, it leads right into our next point. We really need to contrast 2 concepts here. Natural turnover, normal retirements, people moving away, that's completely standard for any workplace. But the public testimony points to recent staffing drops not as natural turnover, but as systemic attrition. That means intentionally wearing down the headcount through constant harassment or the weaponization of disciplinary action. It's a strategy that massively spikes operational fatigue,
ruins safety standards, and, you guessed it, skyrockets municipal liability.
Which brings us to Section 3, Financial and Administrative Liabilities, the blind spots.
Look, administrative, sloppy work and labor fights don't just stay in the HR department, they hit the wallet hard. And there is a massive disconnect happening here. On one hand, taxpayers rightfully expect an independently verified, audited budget before they vote on funding an initiative. But on the other hand, we have this fait accompli trap. Basically, pushing toward a ballot with just a $5,000 entry fee while keeping the long-term escalating millage rates a total mystery. It effectively sidelines the very taxpayers who are supposed to be paying for all this.
And this financial risk is compounded by a pretty clear pattern of administrative noncompliance. First up, violations of state workplace safety regulations, specifically MIOSHA Part 74, because of missing written organizational and succession plans. Then there's this phenomenon the documents call historic amnesia. This is where the administration completely ignores decades of professional audits and studies that taxpayers have already paid for. The end result? Just a loop of repetitive, wasteful spending to answer questions that were settled years ago.
All right, Section 4, the regionalization traps, evaluating the MFERA proposal.
When we stack up all these governance, labor, and financial risks, any regional partner looking at MFRA has to navigate 5 massive traps. Trap 1, scope of services. There's no strict definition of what exact responses are actually provided. The risk? Taxpayers are paying for undefined services. Trap 2, response guarantees. Without staffing benchmarks or response time penalties, there's literally no guarantee that safety outcomes will improve. Trap 3, cost impact. Like we just talked about, no audited budget means a dangerous blank check situation, where millage rates can just keep climbing without further public approval.
And that leads right into the final 2 traps, which might be the scariest. Trap 4, liability structure. Who is legally responsible if something goes wrong? That's totally unresolved right now, meaning individual townships could still be on the financial hook for operational failures. Finally, Trap 5, exit mechanisms. There is no divorce clause in this proposal. Townships risk getting completely locked into a failing system without any way to get their assets back or pull out without massive financial penalties.
So what's the bottom line here? The only way out of this massive pile of risk is to get strictly back to compliance. The municipality has to restore Open Meetings Act transparency across all working groups. They absolutely must adhere to MIOSHA safety requirements. They need to uphold whistleblower protections and stop retaliatory actions under MCL 15362. And they need to establish solid, audited budgets before asking taxpayers for a dime. Fixing these compliance failures isn't optional. It's the bare minimum for a functioning system.
Which leaves us with this final thought. Take a step back and look at the data, the legal precedents, and the glaring administrative blind spots we've mapped out today. Ask yourself, can a regional public safety initiative truly succeed without first establishing statutory compliance? You simply cannot build a solid regional roof on a crumbling foundation of legal and financial liabilities. That is the true cost of taking administrative shortcuts. Thanks so much for joining me for this 5-part explainer series. Stay curious and keep asking those tough questions.